Late at night, in a small American town, two white police officers stopped a young black man, accusing him of robbery. No proof, no reasons, just weird guesses. What didn't they know? That boy was none other than the son of the city's most respected judge, and what started as a simple approach would turn into a devastating scandal, capable of destroying reputations and exposing the rot that many tried to hide. And in court, the truth would come out in a way that no one would ever forget. Expose a web of lies and corruption, and ending with a twist so explosive it would shake the entire police department. It was a sultry night filled with invisible tension in Fairview, Virginia. One of those nights when even the air seems heavy on your shoulders. The narrow, silent streets snaked like sleeping veins through the small town, lit only by ancient wrought-iron streetlights that cast long, tortuous shadows across the empty sidewalks. The houses, lined up like motionless sentinels, guarded their sleeping residents while the warm breeze carried the smell of hot asphalt mixed with the distant scent of night flowers. Behind the wheel of a freshly washed sports car, its shine reflecting every passing lamp, Malik Thompson, 19 years old, walked home at a leisurely pace. Sweaty from basketball practice that had lasted until late, wearing a light t-shirt and his hair still damp, Malik felt a slight exhaustion mixed with that lazy happiness of mission accomplished. The steering wheel turned under his steady hands, while the muffled bass sound of his favorite playlist filled the interior of the car, beating in rhythm with his carefree fingers against the soft leather. Tall, athletic, with the broad shoulders of someone with big dreams, Malik was known in Fairview not only for his talent on the court, but for his polite posture and his easy smile, the smile of someone who never had to hide who he was. His name was respected, his face familiar. He was the kind of young man who got proud looks from his teachers and friendly waves from his neighbors. But on this particular night, for two police officers routinely patrolling those sleepy streets, Malik was not Malik. He was just another silhouette, another presence to be evaluated, judged, labeled, and suspected. Without suspecting anything, Malik accelerated slightly on the way down, mentally singing the chorus of the song, "Carefree, free." The flashing red neon glow of an unlit convenience store flashed past the window like a silent warning. But he didn't see it. He didn't feel it. He didn't know that night, the freedom he carried so naturally would be put to the test in the cruelest way possible. Out of nowhere, like a violent tear in the sultry calm of that early morning, deafening sirens, they cut through the silence of the night like sharp blades. The strobe lights, blue and red, exploded behind Malik, invading his rearview mirror with a fury that seemed to tear him away from reality. Malik's pulse quickened in an instant, not from fear, but from a dull, hot anger that boiled in his chest like a volcano on the verge of eruption. Instinctively, driven by years of difficult conversations with his father about how to survive these situations, he guided the car to the sidewalk with slow, calculated movements. The engine grumbled one last time before falling silent, leaving in the air only the distant echo of the siren that was now fading, replaced by the deafening hammering of his own heart. He took a deep breath, the metallic taste of tension already spreading through his mouth, and cast a quick glance in the rearview mirror. He then saw the doors of the vehicle open suddenly, as if the simple act of leaving was a declaration of war. Two officers. They emerged from the darkness, their figures distorted by the pulsing lights. They both walked towards him with heavy, hurried steps, their hands hovering dangerously close to their gun holsters. No signs of cordiality, no polite requests for documentation, just raw aggressiveness in the look and tone of voice. "Get out of the car now!" shouted the loudest of them, his voice imbued with an authority that did not ask, but demanded obedience. No introduction, no explanation, as if Malik were to blame for simply existing in that space. Malik kept his hands in sight, fingers outstretched like flags of visible surrender, his mind echoing the mantra his father had hammered out since he was a teenager. Never argue in the street. Argue in court. With slow movements, he opened the door, got out of the car, and stood motionless next to the vehicle, feeling the police officer's eyes burning his skin like a hot iron. But it was obvious from the first second, They weren't there to listen. They did not seek to understand. They had already decided what he was and what he deserved. Without even disguising their hostility, they began to brutally search his car, pulling up the seats, rummaging through the glove compartment, kicking carpets as if looking for hidden demons. The shorter one muttered something into the radio, while the other approached with an even more threatening posture. "We received a report. Robbery at a store a few blocks away," he said, as if that justified everything. No matching description, no real evidence. The only coincidence was Malik's skin color, and for them, that was enough. There, standing on the cold sidewalk, lit only by alternating flashes of blue and red, Malik felt, more than ever, the crushing weight of centuries of injustice collapsing on his shoulders. But he stood firm, looking at the ground, controlling every muscle in his face to not show the anger that burned in silence. Because he knew, that night, his real battle was yet to come, and it would be fought before a court, where the truth would finally have a chance to be heard. Even without finding absolutely nothing, no weapons, no stolen merchandise, not even a suspicious receipt, the officers, without hesitation, grabbed Malik by the arms and they handcuffed him with unnecessary brutality. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the empty street like a guilty verdict pronounced before any trial had even taken place. With a sharp, humiliating shove, Malik was thrown against the hot hood of his own car. The impact reverberated through his athletic body, but he stood firm, teeth clenched, refusing to scream or resist, just as his father had taught him. He tried to argue, his voice low and controlled, an effort to maintain dignity in the face of disproportionate violence. "I didn't do anything wrong. Please, sir," he said, each word imbued with a respect that should have been his protection. But their protests fell on deaf ears. The officers ignored him, as if his words were invisible, as if his humanity were invisible. Slowly, the windows of the neighboring houses began to light up, like eyes waking up in the darkness. Curtains moved discreetly, faces appeared in the cracks, and, almost at the same time, shy hands appeared holding cell phones, beginning to record everything in silence. The cameras shook in the nervous hands of the residents, witnesses of something that, deep down, everyone knew shouldn't be happening. As he was dragged towards the police car, his steps dragging on the asphalt, Malik raised his head for a moment. His eyes, once calm, now burned with a cold fury. A fury that came not from fear, but from the certainty of who he was, and who would protect him. With a hoarse voice, but firm as steel, he whispered to the police, a sentence almost lost in the stifling wind. "You guys just made the biggest mistake of your lives." The two officers exchanged a quick look, and a short, mocking laugh escaped their lips. To them, Malik was just another defiant young black man, just another solved case to put on the evening reports. Little did they know. Every second of that abuse was being documented. Every word, every aggressive gesture. Each altered breath would be brought before the one man in town who could ruin their lives with a single sentence. O Pai de Malik, Judge Thompson. The man who did not forgive injustices, even more so when they touched what was most precious to him. And at that moment, even in handcuffs, even being taken by force, Malik knew something that the police ignored. They were digging their own hole. And soon, very soon, they would fall headlong into it. Even handcuffed and leaning against the hood, Malik watched with his jaw clenched as the two police officers searched his car, as if they were looking for a ghost. They ransacked the glove compartment, emptied the trunk, threw his backpack on the floor, scattering college books and basketball shoes across the street. Each object was examined with a suspicious eye, as if they were certain that somewhere there would be something that justified that brutal approach. "Where is it? Where is it?" muttered the shorter officer, rooting around in the back seat like a sniffer dog. "Nobody walks around here at this hour without hiding something," grumbled the other, not bothering to hide his prejudice. The strong light of the flashlight swept every inch of the vehicle, creating elongated shadows that looked like monsters dancing in the dawn. Nothing, not a single crumb of trouble. But, even in the face of the obvious, The officers exchanged complicit glances, as if admitting they had made a mistake was more shameful than the mistake made itself. And then the most perverse looping began. "Maybe it's hiding inside the panels," suggested one of them, hitting the car dashboard with his clenched fist. "Or under the bench," added the other, kneeling to peer under the seat, as if the lack of evidence was, in fact, even greater evidence of guilt. Malik took a deep breath, feeling the humiliation multiply inside his chest like embers in a fire. He knew that for those men, the truth didn't matter. They needed him to be guilty. They needed to justify the violence, the stop, the handcuffs, the cameras that were now recording everything. It was like watching a play performed so many times that the actors had forgotten the difference between reality and fiction. And the audience, this time, was filming. "Everything's clean," the younger officer finally said, with a frustrated sigh. But the oldest didn't accept it. "Nothing clean," he growled. "These guys know how to hide. Just because we haven't found it yet doesn't mean he's innocent." Malik looked up slowly, staring at the officer with a calm that seemed more like defiance. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than any scream. And deep down, even without admitting it, they both knew. That night would still take a very, very high toll. They just didn't yet know the size of the fall. The next morning, the Fairview courthouse was on the verge of combustion. The wooden chairs creaked under the weight of onlookers, journalists, and indignant residents who filled the room. The tension was so thick it felt like the air was vibrating. In the dock, Malik, still handcuffed, stood erect, his eyes steady, his chin high, as if he carried the dignity of generations on his shoulders. The judge responsible for the case? The Honorable Judge Thompson, Malik's salary. When he entered the room, imposing in his black robe, firm footsteps echoing across the marble floor, the audience's murmur dissipated in a second. The judge cast a single glance at his son, and in that instant, his eyes hardened like steel forged in outrage. But he didn't say a word. No, he would allow justice to speak for him. He allowed the two police officers to take the stand with the arrogance of someone who thought he was still in control. He let them present their evidence, an empty pile of assumptions and prejudices. He allowed security camera recordings to be played on a giant screen, revealing second by second the absence of any crime, any error, any justification. Each frame of the recording was an invisible punch in the officers' faces. The humiliation was rising like a wave ready to collapse. Then Judge Thompson took a deep breath, his voice sounding like subdued thunder when he finally spoke. "The young man you treated like a criminal is my son." A shocked murmur ran through the courtroom, like the wind before the storm. He continued, each word a blade. "And I know his clean record better than I know your dirty record." The silence that fell was so absolute that the distant clink of a falling glass echoed in the room. The officers' faces paled, their once straight shoulders now hunched under the crushing weight of shame. Within seconds, the scandal exploded like gunpowder. Headlines popped up on social media. Cameras captured every expression, every tear contained in the stands. Complaints of systemic racism flooded the internal affairs hotlines. Internal investigations were opened. Suspensions were issued. And forever, in that city, the name Thompson, it would echo not like that of a victim, but as an unbreakable symbol of resistance, dignity, and justice. While the investigation continued its course, the Fairview courtroom was still buzzing with the wave of indignation. The people were divided, but the truth had emerged indisputably. The pressure on the officers involved was palpable, with each day bringing new revelations and the weight of public opinion becoming untenable. Over time, the case against the two officers intensified. They were being exposed not just by the justice system, but by the entire city. The Internal Affairs Department, which had previously shown hesitation, now had no choice but to act. Witness testimony began to line up relentlessly against the police officers, and soon new accusations of abuse of power and systemic racism came to light. On a cold December morning, the decision was finally made. The officers were relieved of their duties. their badges stripped as a public reminder that abuse of power would never be tolerated. A sentence of non-conduct was engraved in the words of Judge Thompson when he, in his dignity, declared, "Justice does not bow before authority, nor can it be used as a shield for the errors of those who swear to protect it." The scandal had marked an irreparable division, but it also opened space for a renaissance. The city of Fairview would no longer be the same. The legacy of Judge Thompson, who risked everything to protect his son, would become the basis for a transformation in the community and the police force, which would now have to face reality and rebuild lost trust. And so the name Thompson would become, in history, a symbol not only of justice, but of a future where the truth, although painful, would always prevail. The story loop was complete. What began with the rape of one man would end as a revolution in the heart of the city,